Hey everyone, Symphony Future here on another episode of making things more complicated than they need to be. So today we want to talk a little bit about the camera setup I have going on and some things I'm experimenting with. Now this is by no means final, but it's just a little bit of a trial thing. So I usually shoot all my videos with this little Sony lens. It's a 28mm f2, and on my full frame camera this gives me a pretty good field of view. It allows me to capture basically from the edge of the keyboard to about the desk, so you get a little bit of a background. Now don't mind the mess, it's always a mess here. Usually it's just not in front of the camera but behind the camera, but whatever. So the setup I have is the 28mm on my full frame camera right here on this tripod. Now this tripod is about, I would say, 2.5-ish meters away from the entire setup, and if we go into ultra wide, we get roughly this sort of field of view. Here we get the keyboard and the monitors and stuff. It's not exact, but it's close. So that's the thing I've been doing so far. And the main issue here is that I would like to have a little bit more of a shallow depth of field in my videos because it just looks better. There we go. So getting a shallow depth of field with a 28mm lens is possible, but you need to be fairly close to your subject. And obviously being close to your subject means that we lose the cool foreground and background elements, so that's not an option. So what I need is a more portrait style lens, and for this usually people use 50mm or 85mm lenses. To get the same area in or the same framing, you need to move the camera back, because longer focal length means narrower field of view. So if you want to capture something this wide, you need to move back quite a bit. And there simply isn't any space because there's a roof here. So moving back a lot is not going to work. So I figured, why not try to shoot through a mirror? And that's exactly the setup I have made here. So what I have here is a mirror on a little rig, which is adjustable. It's about 45 degrees right now. With the mirror, with the camera pointing straight up. So this way we get the extra distance from the camera to the mirror, and then from the mirror to the tripod, which is about, I would say, another meter or something. And this allows me to get roughly the same framing with a different focal length lens. So this is pretty close to what I used to have, but now we're using a 50mm lens. There we go, an old Pentax 50mm lens instead of a 28mm lens. So when I move back to my little seat and I sit here, you still get roughly the same framing. But because we're using a 50mm now, we get a shallower depth of field, which is pretty cool. Now, this setup is still very much a trial and error thing. Right now I'm using a normal bathroom mirror, which actually has the reflective layer below a layer of glass. This means you get more diffraction and you get a softer image. Ideally you would use a first surface mirror, where the shiny bits are on top of the glass. So you have glass and then on top you have a shiny coating. Those are more fragile, so less commonly used for bathrooms and stuff. So they will be harder to obtain and probably more expensive. So for now this is a stand-in. Conceptually it seems to work. You might have to motorize the focus because it's a manual focus lens, and manual focusing from this distance is tricky because you need to be both here and at the camera at the same time. So that's a little bit of a trial thing I'm working on. Not sure if it's going to stay, but I thought it would be interesting to share this concept. If anyone has ever tried this or done anything like this, seen anything like this, I haven't for sure. I would like to know about it, and it's a weird random video, but it is what it is. Yeah, see ya. So here we are on the 50mm. I'm using the Sony 50mm 1.8. It's not my favorite lens, but I thought I would give it the best shot I could by using a sharp modern lens instead of the Pentax, which is both manual focus, which makes it a lot harder, and it's a bit of a softer lens to begin with. So this is basically as good as I can get it with the gear I have kind of deal. So the field of view is basically from my JDXA, and as you can see the light stand is in view in this shot and it reaches to, my monitor is right here, so it's just a little bit in front of my monitor, probably like 2 or 3 centimeters. It's really not much, it's a little bit more, this much. It's not much, maybe an inch, let's give it an inch. So that's the 50mm experience at f2.8. The 50mm experience at f2. So let's take a bit of a look around. I also have a little pedal here. So if I hold this up to my head, it should be fairly sharp. And if I move it forward, it should become less sharp. Obviously, moving it back should be less sharp as well. I'm staring at my iPad in case you wonder, because that's where I can actually see what is going on. So I have a little bit of an idea of the things we're doing here. So that's the 50mm test footage right there. So let's see if we can get roughly the same framing with the 28. See if there's any difference in the image whatsoever. Okay, so here we are on the 28mm at f2.0, so getting the exact same frame is close to impossible, but this is very similar. We still have the JDXA, the edge is right here, so it's slightly clipped. The other side we have the monitor, we can just about touch it, it's just out of frame, so it's a slight bit wider, but just to keep everything mostly similar, this does a pretty good job. Now, the obvious advantage here is we have a bit more height in the background, which dropped off a little bit with the 50mm. Now I could probably move the camera a little bit and angle it down a little bit, but that would add extra visual clutter down here, so I think that's not a good idea. In terms of depth of field, we're still in manual focus mode, by the way, so we should still get a fair comparison. I really dislike using autofocus for these setups because you get the focus briefing, so the framing moves around, which is very annoying. So here's our little pedal, you can move it forward, out of focus. Now I'm going to focus in the background. Now just on this little screen here, I would say the image isn't all that different actually. I would say it's fairly comparable. Let's just get the iPad in there. Bye. Viewception. So I'm not quite convinced it's worth all the extra effort of using a mirror to extend the range so we can use longer focal lenses. It might be. Definitely is a little bit sharper on this setup, obviously, because you don't have the extra distortion of a mirror, which obviously helps a little bit with keeping things just a slight bit more contrasty and less messy, because the mirror I use is a second surface reflection mirror, so it passes through glass into the shiny bits and then through the glass out of the mirror, so you get a bit of extra diffraction and image mirroring going on in the mirror. Plus it's not like the most expensive mirror ever made, so it's a bit imperfect to begin with. But conceptually it's a thing, I guess, which you can do. So I'm going to experiment with this a little bit more. Interested to hear what you think, if there's any noticeable positive benefits of using the 50mm versus 28mm. Yeah, it's not much more to say. It's just a weird, fun little project. If you have ever done anything like this, have any experience or any tips, would like to know. That's today's video. Bye bye. If I just kind of lean back like this, we should have a pretty decent feeling for the kind of framing we can get. So it's still until the end of the JDXA, but we're definitely losing a bit here because the screen is actually here, the edge of the screen, which is about this far, so that's about 2 something inches. It's 6 or 7 centimeters probably. And the kind of framing issue we have here is first off the light stand is in the way, which is a bit annoying, but we can work around that. We can actually place it in a different spot and still get mostly the same diffuse light going on, so that's okay. If I move the camera back further to get a wider framing, we'll actually get the 3D printer into the frame instead of the monitor, just because the way the cone works. So with the 28, it's kind of at the beginning of the 3D printer, so the cone moves behind the printer, and with this lens it's steeper to actually get part of the 3D printer into frame, which is just here, like I'm touching it right now, so you can see the point of my finger. That's about 2 or 3 centimeters maybe. So that's a framing issue. Overall, having a little bit less going on up here is, I think, not a bad move in general, although I was planning to put some stuff there with lights and things, but maybe this kind of framing is better anyways. I think the depth of field is slightly better, although there is the risk of haze from the mirror. And if the mirror gets dirty, obviously there will be little dirt specks, which will be annoying to deal with. Let me actually see if I can go to f1.8, if that even matters. Don't think that changed particularly much. If we move the other way around, let's go to 2.8. We'll get a fair bit darker, obviously. It's to be expected. Still, it's a small screen, so it's hard to see. Yep. Hard to say if it's worth the extra effort, to be honest. But it's a fun experiment.